Hello everybody, welcome back to Gelvin Valley Farming Simulator 15. I kind of left off with harvest. I think we're getting down towards the end of it. I don't know about any of you. Maybe now that this is the 106th episode that you have suffered through. Oh, I always forget to change the IC controls. Maybe it hasn't seemed any quicker to you, but to me, this particular harvest seems like it's gone way faster than it did previously when I had a much smaller combine. All right, let's see. Are you gonna drive? All right. You know what? Looks like I saved it at just the right spot, so hopefully he'll go find the combine. Oh, select manually. Gotta tell him which one. Oh, I still get teased about Courseplay by Atomic67. He thinks it's funny. And it is. But I think there's enough room in the field now, at least ways I hope so, to where there's room for him to navigate and get through what he needs to do to get around. Yeah. Alright, see, he's coming in there, and I think this route is set up to take him... Oh, that's right, I don't have the ability. You know what, in Farm Sim 17 and later, they add this little icon, I think somewhere over here, you could click on, and it would pop up a cutout of the map and show you exactly the route where they would take the product or what the route would be. But it doesn't have that here on Farm Sim 15. But that's alright. You know what? I wonder if I need to get started. Yes, here we go. You know what? I'm gonna come in here and get this all ready for baling. And speaking of the baling, just a thought. I have half a notion to sell my round baler and rent a square baler and use that. It doesn't seem like it costs all that much, and I'm wondering if I could zip through it quicker. Oh, I probably need to start this right out of the door. Alright. Let me try to get backed up just so. Get this going. I can't even remember now when I did the most recent episode. I try to record these as I have time and then release them. Oh my goodness, it's slow going up this slope. Oh my goodness. It's so hard to see the perspective here if I lower the camera. This poor little tractor. It goes much quicker going downhill. Anyway, I try to record these as I have time, which seems to happen late at night. And I'm supposed to be in the office tomorrow morning at a pretty good time for a phone call, an important phone call right first thing in the morning. And I don't know, it's been a number of episodes ago. It's going to be a long time before this one airs, given that it's 106th. And I think on the release schedule, I'm still in the mid-30s. So, when it comes to that, I don't even know if this will ever get released. We'll just have to play that by ear, I guess. But tomorrow I'm going to do something a little different that I don't get to do every day in my occupation. It's like what I was starting to say, it's been a number of episodes ago. I think I explained in brief kind of what my occupation was about. And I gotta say, my occupation to most people is hard enough to understand or boring maybe to them. then even though some have tried valiantly, that are friends, if we're out to dinner or visiting with one another, they will ask questions, about the kinds of things that we do in my occupation. But eventually, it always seems like the conversation stalls. And, I mean, let's face it, I'm an accountant, and not very many people are interested in that subject. I think more should be. It would really help them out in life if they knew how to do a little bit of accounting. Well, maybe some would say, well, that's just my bias or whatever, and they're probably right. There's maybe many other disciplines where people would say, you know what, if the general population knew a little bit more about what I would do, their life could be so much easier. I don't know, maybe a plumber or an electrician, some of the basic things. So, and I've noticed this before in my family and social circles, we don't, there's a lot of things, the people that I generally hang around with, a lot of things that we don't do that are probably fairly common to most people in life. For example, we don't go to the movie theater. Um, we don't go to professional games. I'm just not interested in those things. We don't have a television. Most people we associate with, and I'm thinking especially in our church family, whatever, we don't. So a lot of times, when we get together, it isn't to watch a game or to do some of these activities. We talk um, with one another about life, about lots of things, and so a lot of it ends up being occupation. And I don't mean to say that's particularly unique from anybody else. I know we all talk, right? About what we do with our friends, depending on what different. Oh, what in the world? What are you doing, Combine? Oh my goodness. Okay, Atomic 67, if you're watching this has nothing to do with courseplay. Nothing at all. This, I don't know what he was doing. I'm gonna try to snap this edge off. Sometimes you just gotta take it over. What can I say? Now that should be a square corner, but I've noticed there's been a lot of times, for whatever reason, this combine has had difficulty on this corner. I'm not sure why. It just has. So it kind of comes up and it loops over, and then it must have just plowed straight in, kind of like we see here. Uh, yeah, like I say, I'm not sure why. And now my tractor's having trouble, and this is due to courseplay. So I guess Atomic can keep laughing at me. Still don't have enough room in the field, apparently. Oh, it doesn't. Oh, it must have been a little bit off kilter. It wouldn't go. Alright, everybody happy? I think so. Let me go back to my windrowing machine here. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, conversations that we have about what we do. And in a lot of these conversations, sometimes, like I say, people will ask questions about what I do, and it's hard to talk about in terms that people understand. I guess it's generic enough. And there's a lot of information we handle, that is highly confidential and that our clients, wouldn't want revealed, shared, or anything like that, as you might expect, because it's about, their finances. And so it limits a lot of times what we're able to talk about. But for example, I have a number of friends who are in the construction industry, whether homes or excavation or that kind of thing. Well, these guys can talk about what they do all day long because everything they do is in public. Maybe if a project hasn't started, they can't say anything. But once they start working on that house, once they start making that road, digging that pond, whatever it is, everybody sees it, or everybody in the vicinity, so they're free to talk about it, describe what they're doing, and that kind of thing. Plus, they're, and this is just levels of interest in people. Like I say, maybe a lot of people consider my occupation just boring, and maybe some of it is they just don't understand. So it has a lot more pizzazz, if you will, to hear somebody talk about, if they're a farmer, if they're an excavator, if they're an excavation, you know, where they do tangible things. Oh my goodness! Try to can't talk and chew bubble gum or drive a tractor at the same time. Go away, Thank you. It just seems it's a whole lot easier to hold a conversation with somebody who works with their hands or with machines or does something where you can tangibly see the results, with your own eyes. Now, for me, I go to work every day and I sit in front of a computer and I do stuff on the computer. And I gotta say, when I get done, some days it is hard to get that feeling, that contented feeling, that a person can have when you've worked hard and you've been productive and you've done something useful to someone else. Just those basic things that make a person feel good about the work that they do. If you're a doctor and you've seen X number of patients, um, if you're an engineer, even, they may sit in front of a computer too, but they worked on this drawing and the drawing took shape. It's like they're building something, even though it's in a computer, they can kind of see results. Well, a good lot of what I do, it's more intangible than that. And I gotta say, that's probably one of the biggest frustrations I do have with the nature of the work I do is it's so intangible. For example, right today, before I started this episode, I was doing what I call reviewing work papers. We're auditing a benefit plan, and my staff did some things in the file, they did some things on a report, and they wanted me to quality check it, if you will. So I did. It basically amounts to a lot of reading to see what they did, what they put together, make sure it agrees to standards and our internal policy, make sure it looks like an appropriate report to go out for its intended use. And already, even as I say this, there's probably people saying, well, that sounds pretty boring. And you know what? It is. And I get to the end of the day. Now, this particular project I happen to complete. And I guess I feel some measure of satisfaction in that. It's definitely not my favorite thing to do. But there's a lot of that kind of work that, it's necessary, needs to be done. Um, because if you don't do it, there could be an audit failure, and that's how, you can be taken to court, you get your name in the news, and everybody says, well, what's wrong with that person? Why can't they do their job? And all that kind of stuff. So it is necessary and important, but it doesn't always leave you with those warm fuzzies of, like I say, that you've accomplished something of use today that's benefited people. Maybe let me hop from here. Oh, not there. Did our combine make the turn this last time? By George, I think he did. Yeah, looks like he did. Or partially, anyhow. Maybe he kind of looped in where he dove down before. So like I say, it's extremely hard to just talk to people about because they don't understand. And when you do try to share basics of what we do, a lot of times their eyes glaze over and they just find it very difficult to relate. Unless and until they have a particular need, and then there's an opening of the understanding. When we, for example, work on a financial statement for a company because their banker asked for it, if they've never had to have that done before, they had no clue maybe just what it was, why it could be important, what it would mean to someone else, what it could mean to themselves, what it takes to put it together, it's all sorts of things. And I would say that's true probably of all of us. I mean, just today also, I had to take my car to the mechanic for some issues that I don't know how to fix. That just isn't my expertise. Well, when your alternator goes out, and I understand the basics of what an alternator does. I've just never personally fixed one, so rather than take time to do it myself, I just pay a professional to do it. Well, I gotta tell you, if my car isn't gonna go when I need it to go, all of a sudden I'm interested, very much so, in what's wrong. And after paying the bill, I'm all the more interested. So I don't know that it's totally different. Whatever the discipline is, until we need it, maybe we just aren't as interested in what someone else does. Unless we're just trying to be personable with them or figure out something. Maybe we'd like to do something different. But with what I'm gonna do tomorrow, maybe even that would make sense to most people. And it's basically counting stuff. Who doesn't periodically do an inventory of something that they have? It might be paper plates. If you're planning for a picnic, we all know how to count stuff. And here, I can't remember if I mentioned here before, we picked up another client, and we're auditing their financial statements. And sometimes when people hear the word auditor, they assume it's the government coming in to do an audit, and that is a type of audit, where the government taxation departments, whether it's federal or state, and I don't know how it is in other nations, I assume they have something comparable, they can pull people's tax returns at random or through some system they have, and they can go do an audit of all different uh, ways and means and types, and in terms of what they're looking for in an audit. And generally, they are looking for wrongdoing, or they're looking to ensure the tax law was properly applied. But probably more honestly still, they're looking for money. One thing I've observed over the years with the government auditors is they don't tend to bother small fry. You know, if you don't make any money or not very much, they know that if they come audit you, they're probably not going to get any more revenue. So what they a lot of times will do is target the highly wealthy, successful businesses, and they'll go after them to make sure they have dotted every I and crossed every T. Because oftentimes there are things that are missed, or, let's face it, occasionally there are unethical companies and wealthy individuals out there that cut corners and do things they shouldn't just to save a buck on taxes. So, but that isn't the kind of audits that we do. When we are asked to do an audit, which isn't very often, it's to help a company. It's for a purpose that the company has. It's the dang. Oh, it's too bad that's a great demand for canola. Why couldn't it be a great demand for barley? uh, okay. Is that gonna make it in there? We shall see. Yeah, it's gonna make it in. So companies will come to us and they will say, my bank, in order for me to get a loan, says that I have to give them my annual financial statements audited by a certified public accountant, which is what I am and what our firm is, if you will. And so they'll ask us to come do it, and it's for a very particular purpose. They will not be able to get their loan unless they have this audit done. Now, I'm not saying that they like having the audit done. I mean, believe you me, they would rather their banker didn't require that, but all of a sudden they have a use. Another purpose, may be if it's absentee owners of a company, um, or if it's owners and everything's being run by management. A lot of times they want to have it audited. They want to make sure that the data they're getting from management is reliable, that it's a straight scoop. They want somebody independent to go look over their shoulder and see what they're doing and see if there's any wrongdoing, making sure the financial statements are fairly stated and all that. So that's how we get called in. It isn't something the government requires clients to do. So tomorrow, and I'm supposed to get up early to go work on this, and instead I'm working on a silly YouTube video. Tomorrow we get to go do part of an audit, which is an inventory observation. A lot of times I think when people think of accountants, they think of somebody like I've just described, chained to a desk, looking at numbers, adding columns of them all day long. Well, we do some of that, not as much as you would think. But when you do an audit, part of an audit is being able to go and touch and physically handle the things that, one of our clients will say that they have. So tomorrow it'll be a hazelnut inventory. So there's going to be totes and totes and bags and all these different containers full of various grades and types of hazelnut product. So we've never done this particular client before, so I really can't hardly say how it'll be. We have audited a company like this in the past, and that's what I recall. So it's going to be tracked probably in weights, and we're going to need to see that the product exists. So by going and looking at it, we'll see that yes, these are hazelnuts. I mean, we know what those are. We need to see that if the company says, hey, we have several million pounds of it, well, do they in fact have all those millions of pounds there on the floor? And so we'll need to figure out a way to measure that, and figure out the weights. And the company has already counted it themselves. So a lot of it will be just spot checking on a sample basis, if you will, what they did. And to kind of get a picture that they own and have what they say they have. And there's all kinds of procedures and things I won't bore you with, but where we need to be able to tell that this is their inventory, it's not anybody else's. Where we need to be able to tell when there's a stack of totes, is the one on top clear in the back, is it really full of hazelnuts too? Let's take it down and take a look at it and see that it's actually hazelnuts in it and not just a bunch of garbage. You wouldn't believe some of the shenanigans that have been pulled, over the years. I mean, it's a lot of work, but if you have a desperate company, sometimes they will do desperate things in, trying to manipulate their financial position, even with inventory. And you can look up cases and all that. So, to me, I'm really looking forward to tomorrow. It's going to be a fun day because, like I say, a lot of the time I sit in front of a computer. So now my staff and I would get to go visit this new client. We get to count some of their inventory, look it over, and we'll see their facility. It isn't just inventory. A lot of times, like I say, to touch and to handle. A lot of companies will have buildings, they'll have equipment, they'll have, these things that they have built. And if they say they have all these assets, one audit procedure is to verify that they in fact exist. It's like if we were auditing this farm, that we have here on Gelvin Valley, we would have on our list, for example, the tractor that I'm driving right now, or the course play is driving. So one procedure the auditor would do is like, well, okay, it says that you own this New Holland tractor. Show it to me. Where is it? And they'll say, okay, you say that it's a certain age. Well, let me look at the hours on it. Let me verify that this is as old or as young as you claim it is. Because, sometimes assets can have a certain value, or you can claim a certain value, for collateral or what have you. And, part of the job of the auditor is to see if it exists and it is in the state that you say it is. If this tractor we were driving right now was sitting in the boneyard, had no tires, was sitting up on the blocks, was rusted through, the engine compartment was open, and just looked like trash, and you couldn't even start it. Well, okay, you have a tractor, but it isn't worth anything because it's, sitting there and is not in a usable state. So that's a lot of other things we'd look at in an audit too. And it only goes on from there. The fun stuff to me are the things you can touch with your hands, and those are two notable things that you can literally walk up to and see with your eyes. But then there's all kinds of other areas of accounting, that are just flat out intangible. A company at any given time is going to have somebody that owes it money. Well, those are called receivables, something you need to receive something from someone else, primarily like a customer, that you've sold something to on credit. Okay, well, that's an asset too, and so we need to figure out how to audit it. And so sometimes it's sending a letter to the customer and saying, hey, as of such and such date, do you owe $50,000 to this company? And the customer then will write back and say whether they do or don't. And a lot of times they don't. Sometimes, letters we send out like this are ignored, and so there's other procedures we gotta do, to validate those balances. And just like any company will have somebody that owes them, the company that we're auditing also owes other people. And those are called payables. And so, there's procedures for auditing that. And generally the risk is that they're understated. There's a risk the companies wouldn't show all of the payables that they owe, or would try to hide it because it doesn't look as good as reporting all their assets. So we need to go through procedures to make sure they have all that recorded. And debt, and anyway, I could go on and on about different things in a financial statement, but I'm sure people listening to this, their eyes are glazing over already. I realize some of that it isn't going to resonate or necessarily be of interest. It's just, yeah, maybe a little more explanation on what I do for a living, if anybody cared. And like I say, I'm just kind of excited tomorrow to go see this company. We don't often pick up a well, I don't know if I'd call this a large client. Size of a client is all relative. There's any number of ways to measure the size of a client. Sometimes it's in revenue to our firm. If it's worth a lot to us, that's a large client to us. Sometimes it's sheer size of the company, and which may or may not be of substantial import to our firm, meaning we may not do a lot of work for them. It all just depends on what they need us to do. So this one here is a new one. We've never worked on them before. We've worked on someone similar that's in the same industry, so we have some understanding of what we're getting into. But every time you meet that new client, there's some amount of vetting that we've tried to do, because here's the thing, our neck is on the line. I'm talking to you about going and doing these audit procedures, and we generally only do the work we do on a sample basis. I think that's sometimes a misunderstanding. People hear the word audit and think, wow, that is so thorough. You must have looked at everything. Well, we probably could, but nobody would ever want to pay us to look at literally everything. There's just too many transactions. Any given company that's of the size where they require an audit, they have literally hundreds of thousands of transactions. There's no way they would want to pay us to look at all of them. So we're stuck looking at a sample, which means you have to use some types of statistics in determining how many items you look at, and which items you look at. There's risk assessment areas that are likely to have misstatements. We want to hit those harder than other areas that are likely not to have as many. So it isn't a perfect science. We and any others like us, would do the best we could. But there's always, you're kind of sticking your neck out in terms of rendering an opinion on someone's financial statements. You've audited it and it's fairly stated. That's kind of what we're attesting to or asserting in our audit opinion. Well, if we're going to do that and stick our neck out, we want to make sure we are dealing with reputable people. So a lot of times before we take on a customer or a client, that we know is going to need an audit, or even if they don't need an audit, it's just risky and dangerous to your professional credibility and reputation to work with dishonest people who, either want you to break the law, and you'd be surprised what people do. And I think some people are, like the phrase is, dumb like a fox. They want to see what they can get away with. Some of it is ignorance. They don't necessarily know the laws or the rules, so some of it is ignorance. But some of it, like I say, I think is being dumb like a fox. They want to see what they can get away with and then put your name on it because they know we are professionals and that we have a license behind us, and that gives reputation and credibility, and people want to use that, and sometimes not for a good end. And a lot of times what happens when they get in trouble, well, my accountant told me I could do it. Well, maybe your accountant told you you could do it, but did your accountant have all the facts, and were you honest with him or her? So I maybe sound more passionate about this than any of you could possibly care about it, but I think you can understand that just as well as I can. If you're in business with someone and you figure out they're lying to you, I don't care who you are, that ain't gonna feel good. And you probably don't want to be around that person or do business with them. Those are people that steal, that cheat, and just aren't reputable. They're reputation destroyers, potentially, if you're in business with them, and they can drag you down with them. So a lot of times before we take this on, like I say, there's a lot of vetting that goes into it, and we talk to other people in the community that would have some idea of management and their integrity, their honesty, to try to take it on, because it lowers our risk and hopefully boosts the chance that the books are already correct, before we even get in there and do our auditing work. So anyway, tomorrow, like I say, we'll be looking at some nut inventory. Like I say, these are hazelnuts. It's actually probably the most common nut that is in Oregon, where I live, that's grown here. I mean, there's a few walnuts and some other nuts here, but I think like in the U.S., boy, it's like 99% of the hazelnuts or something like that grown commercially in the U.S. are grown here in Oregon. It must just be our climate is perfect for it. I don't know. Now, let me tell you to drive now. Is that what I can do? Except, well, say excuse me, please. All right. I think I have to go through this gate up here. I think that's what I need to do because I'm too wide now with this header to ever get through. Yeah, I remember now. When I started this field, I believe I started way up here because I could fit through this gate. I don't think I could fit through the one down below. Probably need to come do a little map modification or whatever it takes to make it so I can just drive straight on through it. Here, let me turn on my indicators, blinkers. Well, it appears to me, I didn't turn my timer on, but judging from the in-game time, I think I've gone over half an hour already. I guess this is what it sounds like when you have an accountant excited to go to work the next day. So maybe, yeah, I think of all the accounting stereotypes. People wonder if we even have a pulse that because we're so boring. So maybe accountant excitement is just not quite enough to get anybody else out of bed. But anyway, just sharing a little bit from my life. So I think I'm going to finish driving this down here off cam. Thank you so much for taking time to watch and listen to me talk about even what the auditing world is like. You take care, have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next one.